Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Hopefully we can get back to some more normal videos now. Most of the science is over. I did say most, didn't I? Yeah, there's a bit more. An air of confusion, and thanks to one of my viewers for pointing out something that had completely slipped past my simple little mind. My chats with Ray did get a bit confusing for me. As I said, I don't do maths and stuff, and it did get a bit complicated. But at the end of the day, the guy was trying to give me the simplest solution. Me not understanding it is my problem, not his. Air of confusion was given by the fact that in the States things aren't the same as in the UK necessarily. And I think we all have to step back and appreciate sometimes that we can be dealing with people from all different parts of the world. And not everybody thinks the same as in your country. And the air of confusion was based on the amount of the MSU fertilizer I should be using. So confusion number one, the amount I was supposed to use was given as 1 hash. The hell's that supposed to mean? Well, apparently it means £1 in the States. Never heard of it. Never heard of using the hash sign to represent a pound in weight. So I kept saying, but I still don't know how much to use, and he kept repeating the same expression. And I think he was starting to get a bit cross with me. Stand back sometimes and appreciate that you could be dealing with a different part of the world. Yeah? So anyway, I now know that that represents £1 in weight. And there we get on to another subject. £1 in weight in the US is exactly the same as £1 in weight in the UK. However, 1 gallon is not. And that explains my TDS reading with my little experiment with 1 teaspoon, or just under 1 teaspoon, per gallon of water. A gallon of water to me is 8 pints. Sorry. You know, we invented the flipping system over in this part of the world, so I don't expect it to be different anywhere else, but it is. It's not 8 pints. Yeah? If we all use litres, we'd avoid the confusion. But anyway, it explains why, with my chats with Ray, my TDS reading should have been somewhere between 900 and 1200-ish, which is, that's gone to 4 digits. That's ridiculously high. But I only got a reading of 630. Well, that's because I had a lot more water in my gallon than Ray would have had in his gallon. Yeah? So simple explanation, but not flippin' obvious. And then I've just gone on the internet to work out, what a US gallon and what a UK gallon actually represent. And the word pint came up. I thought, I wonder. And yes, would you believe the US pint is not the same as the UK pint either. A litre is a litre is a litre, wherever you are in the world. For God's sake, people, get up to date. Metric system is universal. That applies to this flipping country as well. Get rid of this old stuff. Get up to date. It gets simple. You look at, a litre of water, and you sort of think, well, I wonder how much that weighs. Well, have a look on the internet, and it'll come out at a lovely round figure, 1 kilogram. How simple is that? Everything just works together in metric. But anyway, for my measurements, for my MSU, when I mix my stock solution, we'll be geared up to converting a US gallon to litres. And then I know where I am. And luckily, the amount of MSU fertilizer that is supposed to go into the stock mix is £1, which is the same in this country. I've got no means of measuring weight. I've got no scales or anything like that, and my tub's been partly used, so I can't use that either. But my daughter's got some scales, so we can accurately measure. Now, £1 of MSU mixed with 1 US gallon of water provides a stock base solution, and Ray thoroughly recommends mixing up this solution, because if you use very small amounts of that fertilizer, you will not get an even balance of nutrients. That was something I pointed out in my video. You've got big granules, little granules, powder, and the elements are done like that. If it was all ground up into a powder, certain chemical reactions can take place and the chemical makeup would change. Yeah? Certain molecules start binding together, and science, again, far too deep for me. But I understand why the fertilizer's been made that way. And the granules are there because what's inside them is inside that case, which stops it mixing with anything else. And as soon as it gets in the water, the casing dissolves and all the elements mix together and it works fine. So I understand why, but for the old home user where you might want to mix up half a teaspoon, what's in your half a teaspoon is totally unpredictable, seriously unpredictable. You could have a massive overdose of one of the elements and hardly any of one of the others. So it's not to be recommended. Go with the guy who, flipping sells the stuff, uses the stuff, and, who gives the advice. Go back to the well, not the actual manufacturer, but, the main man, in my opinion. So the idea of mixing a large volume of the fertilizer removes that imbalance of nutrients to a negligible amount. You could be a fraction out on one or two of them, but negligible. So the stock solution is the answer. That's the way I'm going. I'll just adjust what I was about to do. Luckily, I haven't already done it because I haven't got any way of weighing it. But, by adjusting a US gallon to litres, I probably won't mix up a pound weight of MSU, because the amount of stock solution that's going to produce will probably last me a year and a half. And I don't know whether it will remain stable that long in liquid form. So I'm going to mix up a smaller volume. I'll probably go for half. Yeah, so I'll probably do half a US gallon with half a pound of mix. The resulting solution is identical. That's all I need to know. And then it works out quite nicely, because once you've mixed the stock solution that I've got recommended by Ray, you can then use a measured amount of that stock solution into another US gallon of water, and you will get the magic 125 parts per million of nitrogen. And when I get to that point, doesn't have to be now, I'll do it soon, I can then take a TDS reading at that point, and that will then be a known TDS reading for that amount of nitrogen in the mix. And from that day forward, all my worries are gone. Because if I want to mix half as strong, well, just use half as much of the stock solution. It all becomes simple. You could even make a graph. But that would be the easy way, would be, go for 125 parts per million, take a TDS reading, write it down, yeah? And then use half of the amount of the MSU stock solution in the same amount of water, so that would then be half as strong. Take another TDS reading, and then just make a little graph from those two readings, and then any parts per million that I need, I just need to go and have a look at my graph. But quite honestly, the maths for doing that is probably simple enough that I don't need the graph. But anyway, that's where I am with that lot. But getting back to the real world, as in the orchids that I grow and what they look like, which is what we'll be doing from now on with any luck. I've got a show coming up, and I've been asked to supply plants in bloom. Well, I'm confident this can go. The actual show, my plants need to be handed over, not this coming Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, ready for set up on the Thursday, and the show is on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, which I think is somewhere around the 16th. So obviously on that Tuesday, when I hand the plants over, they've got to be capable of still being in bloom on the Sunday. So I've got to make a judgment call. But I'm pretty sure the Miltoniopsis will still be good, because it's still got 3 or 4 buds to open, which will make it quite a good spike for this type of plant. And at worst, possibly the bottom bloom may have gone, but that can just be trimmed. And that's not a bad plant either. So that'll be okay. This one here will probably be okay to go. All they want is plants in bloom. The quality of the plant is of less importance. That's down to you. They can hide the plant in amongst others. So that's not the best of plants, but it's going to have 2 spikes open with quite a few blooms on. And it is quite a pretty flower. I've just noticed that first bloom that opened on that spike is distorted. But then that's not a happy plant. The rest of the blooms are opening nicely. Pretty little bloom. Virtually pure white. Lovely. That may go. That's going to still be in bloom. It's still got buds to go, but it's only got 1 spike. So it's not a good specimen to actually put forward to a show, but it's an unusual shaped orchid. Pretty colours, so that can probably go. This is going to be over. They're starting to go now. A lot of the long cane dendrobium blooms do not last long, the exception being the Latoria types. My mouth won't work. The bulbophyllum, I have no idea. Now, if I take him that, he's going to say, oh, cheers, where the hell are we going to put that? Because basically the spike is pendulous, which means they've got to find some way of getting that plant up in the air, which means it'll probably have to hang somewhere on the display near the back. But the second spike should be open by then, so it'll have 2. But what I don't know is how long these spikes last. Yeah, if that spike's over, the plant will be better for display purposes, because this bloom's going to be a lot higher up, so it could actually sit on the bench. So maybe. I don't think any of the Tolumnias are going to last long enough. I mean, this one's only recently opened, but there's 1 bloom on that already going. That's just not going to be a long-lasting one, that one. The plant's not that happy in the first place. This one lasts really well, but I think it will be over by the time we get to there. In fact, I'm sure it will. Do you know that branch down below, this bit where my finger is wiggling, is starting to branch again at the base. So that's going to be a slight extension to blooming, but not enough. Not enough to go. Shelob Tolkien, I'm hoping that the 2 other spikes will have pushed on, because this spike probably will be gone by then, but it's got 2 more coming up behind. Both of those have got 4 buds on, the same as this one. So if both of those could be open, that'll be worth taking. And I think the Vanda can go. Let me get up, see if I can climb up a bit, because I'm not getting it down at the moment. But the bloom on this one this time is different. I'm hoping the camera can get that against the light. But this was a white bloom with a lilac lip with a bit of yellow. That's what it looked like on the previous 2 blooms. Look at the colour of the blooms now. They've got a purple tinge that's quite prominent. Now that wasn't flipping there last time. And I mean that spike has got 5 blooms on. And they last a long time, I know that from previous bloomings. So that can go. That's not a bad plant either. So, but again, they'll have to put it somewhere up the back. But yeah, the colour on that's come out this time. There's a lot more purple than there was last time. And it makes those, basically the other 2 petals, and certainly the top sepal, far more interesting than just pure white. And this other Vanda, that's a nice bright orange one with lots and lots of blooms on the spike. That might be open, so that might be able to go. Oh, made my shoulder ache holding the camera up like that. Funny angle. Unfortunately, this one, although I love this plant, this is the Odontoglossum species, Naevium, and although I love those blooms, the plant is not in a good state. It's my fault. If I'd preempted that possibly going to Malvern, I could have dealt with it. But to have 3 spikes, 1 each side and 1 at the front, it could only go near the front of the stand, and they might not want it at the front of the stand. There's no point in trying to stake those now and stick them upright, because the blooms will actually be upside down. You know me, I like my spikes to arch. I like them to look natural. But for show purposes, it almost writes them off. For display purposes, like on a competition table, it's fine. But in a show, you know, where you're making a display for a show, all the plants are really crammed up together and the blooms come out the top. You know, there isn't a lot of room for long arching spikes. But I'm not sure they'll even still be in bloom by then. I mean, all 3 spikes are open now. This one's the latest one to open, the little one at the front. But yeah, I'll have to have a think about that. I don't think I've got any phalaenopsis that are going to be worth taking. And quite honestly, it's getting a bit thin on the ground on the bloom front in here. My lovely Odontoglossum's down to it there on the Psidium, that's now called something else, hence the confusion. That's down to its last bloom, so that's coming up for its repot time now. The radiators, I mean, although you can see 2 nice spikes there coming on nicely, it's actually 2 separate plants, so there's only 1 spike per plant, so I don't think that's going to make the grade, shall we say. There isn't much else, you know. As I say, when I get to the 8th, you know, the glorious 8th, when I do everything in bloom, I think that's going to be quite a short video this time. Sherry Baby might be out in time for the show. I mean, that's always a good one to hide the plant and stick the spike quite near the front and put a little label on the plant saying, "I'm fragrant," because people are always fascinated, you know, to see an orchid that actually smells of chocolate. You know, it puzzles people. They're not orchidy type people. We all know it smells of chocolate. That's the main reason we have it, quite honestly. Anyway, yeah, so just to clear up the business with the MSU fertilizer, in summary, because I don't want to leave anything lying around in the previous videos that could be misleading. The recommendation is a stock solution of a known volume and a known amount of liquid, and then use the amount, some of that stock solution to make up your watering for your plants, because using a very, very small amount of the way that fertilizer is manufactured and given to you will not give you an even balance of nutrients. The smaller the amount you try and use, the more that imbalance will be exaggerated to such an extent it could actually be quite wrong. You know, you could get a real overdose of nitrogen in one mix and then hardly any in the next one. And in your growing season, it's the nitrogen that's the important bit. That's the bit that's going to generate your growth. All the other bits are still important, don't get me wrong, but that's the bit that gets used the most in generating new growths. Yeah? So if you're pushing your plants on through the growing season, it's your nitrogen amount you need to concentrate on. I don't know whether this... I mean, these buds are starting to form now, but... it's possible, remotely possible, that could be open for Malvern. But only 4 blooms? They'd have to be something pretty spectacular to warrant going. But the guy said, anything in bloom, I'll have it. And the other thing that's going to go that you haven't seen for ages... how good's this camera? Can I get it to point? If you look... No, I'll go outside. There'll be a quiet bit while I go outside. And then I'll start talking when I come back in. I'm not talking in the garden. People, men in white coats will come and pick me up in a van. Okay, that was just a quick look. That's my leopard marsh orchid. It's a variant of one of our native species. It's got 4 spikes on. The blooms are just starting to open at the base of the spike. So in 2 weeks' time, those spikes should be in full bloom, or at least 3 of them. You could see there was 1 spike a little behind the other 3. So that'll go. If that's in full flood, then that one will go, because a few native terrestrials at an English show go down well. Yeah, it's not only the tropical stuff. Yep, good stuff. So yeah, we're back to normal now, but just remember, those that do use that MSU fertilizer, if you're trying to get small amounts out of the tub and mix it with your water, you're just not going to get an even balance of nutrients. And the main man says mix up a stock solution with a much larger volume of the MSU And doesn't matter how strong that stock solution is, you're going to water it down before you use it anyway. But it means you'll get an even balance of nutrients when you water your orchids, you know, which is good. It's just got to be good, hasn't it? It's just got to do them good to have the proper balance of something that a lot of science has gone into to get that mix. And if you only use tiny little quantities, you're not using the science, are you? You're sort of doing your own thing. And as I say, if the more frequently you use it and the more frequently you mix stuff up with small volumes, it's going to average out. You know, you might get an overdose of one this time, an underdose next time, and the next time it might be spot on. It would average out over a growing season, but you will get an imbalance. So it's worth having a think about. And just remember that the US and the UK, imperial measurements are not the same. A gallon is not a gallon in the two parts of the world, and nor is a pint. But a litre and a gram are the same wherever you go. Come on, let's get it together here. Let's enter the modern world all together now. Off we go. See you next time.